Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Baltimore. This is part two of a discussion about Bernie Sanders' speech Thursday night. He gave it on a live stream for about 25 minutes. I strongly suggest you watch part one of this interview because we talked about what he thought should be done at the convention. We talked about his lack of anything really positive to say about Hillary Clinton. And what this one is about, this part of the discussion, is about what he really spent most of his time saying, people who have been part of this movement to elect Bernie Sanders, what he thinks they should do. And what he said they should do is really run. They should run for Congress. They should run for state legislatures. They should organize campaigns down ticket. So here's a bit of what he had to say about it.
Here is a cold, hard fact that must be addressed. Since 2009, some 900 legislative seats have been lost to Republicans in state after state throughout this country. In fact, the Republican Party now controls 31 state legislatures and controls both the governor's mansions and state houses in 23 states. That is unacceptable. We need to start engaging at the local and state level in an unprecedented way. Hundreds of thousands of volunteers helped us make political history during this last year. These are people deeply concerned about the future of our country and about their own communities. Now we need many of them to start running for school boards, city councils, county commissions, state legislatures, and governorships. State and local governments make enormously important decisions, and we cannot allow right-wing Republicans to increasingly control them.
So now joining us to continue our discussion, first of all from Farmington, Connecticut, is Bill Curry. He's a columnist for Salon.com. He was a counselor to the president in the Clinton White House. Joining us from Atlanta, Yvette Carnell is the founder of BreakingBrown.com and editor at YourBlackWorld.net. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Yvette, first of all, that's really where he spent most of his time, telling people to fight down ticket for all these other races. But I also thought it was kind of rather interesting that he never said run for the Democratic Party. He left that kind of open. I mean, given his own history as running as an independent, it really leaves up in the air how he thinks people should run. He just thinks progressives should run. What'd you make of that?
Well, I think that's what he thinks. I think he thinks progressives should win. I think he's not wedded to the Democratic Party, and I don't think he thinks we should be wedded to the Democratic Party. I think he's going to support Hillary because he caucuses with the party. That's what he does. But I don't think he has any problem with people supporting Jill Stein. I don't think he'd have any problem with another party coming into the mix, as we see in so many other countries. So I think what's most important about what Sanders said is what he didn't say. He didn't say, he didn't give a feverish, let's get out here for Hillary. He didn't give a feverish kind of, let's get out there for the Democrats because the Democrats are so much different than the Republicans. He didn't say that at all. He said, go out there and fight for what you believe in. He didn't tell you how to fight. He just told you what to do. Go out and vote, go out and, organize, go out and get involved in the state legislature. We have too many Republican governorships, all of that stuff. So he's really telling you what the problem is. He's not telling you that Democrats are going to fix the problem. And I think he's not saying that because he knows better.
Bill, it's such a unique presidential election. Unless there's some radical change in all of this, even the Republican Party leadership is walking away from Trump. I don't know what kind of endorsement it is when Ryan says, I endorse him, except I think he's a racist. I mean, this is not the way you get your guy elected, by talking this way. They're really worried about what happens with Congress. And, we understand the Koch brothers are going to put all their money into fighting for control of Congress. This down ticket fight looks like is actually what the election's about.
To many, it is. I mean, there are. I think first of all that part of what Bernie was saying tonight, part of the reason that he didn't address the Hillary question is that he isn't ready to. That they haven't reached agreement. I would take from tonight's speech that his hour and a half at the Washington Hilton with the secretary the other night didn't go all that well. And that the things that her people have said publicly probably aren't that much different from what she's saying privately, which is that they're not going to give a lot. I didn't think this was someone who knew where he wanted to bring this fight. But in the end, I do think he will endorse Hillary Clinton, and I think he will say that in this, faced with Donald Trump, we should win this election. And he'll have to make a strong case for it because a lot of his people won't feel that way. A lot of the unaffiliated voters come over to him will. A lot of the activists who made the campaign what it was will not. And by the way, it's not Bernie's job, it's Hillary's job. And we'll see what comes out of that platform committee. I don't know. I think she still regards the issues that Bernie Sanders raised as the issues of a rump faction. I think she still feels offended by the challenge. I don't hear from her people or from her supporters in the media great respect. They fundamentally misinterpret this. Almost everything that Bernie ran on, unaffiliated voters and the broad middle class not only support, but support strongly.
If you take Sanders' call to really focus on the down ticket, especially Congress, you can start seeing the beginnings of a strategy, which is you start now in terms of electing progressives to the House, but especially you start actually now organizing for 2018, 2020. And you can even imagine in 2020 a serious campaign to primary against Hillary and make this a one-term presidency.
Let me say that let's see what happens in November. But that idea that there is, I think, something close to what Yvette said earlier, that if you look at his career, some of the times he's been, most of his life, he was an independent candidate. This year, he worked within the Democratic Party entirely to win this nomination. And he was very blunt about the reason for doing so, because he saw no other practical path to pursue. And I think, again, this idea of building an independent movement in which grassroots activists are free to seek their own paths, I think is important. But if you feel that the hierarchy, the elites of the Democratic Party, have been an obstruction to progress in this country and have been, an impediment to the development of a progressive political agenda, they have to be defeated. They're not going to give their power away. They took Chuck Schumer, the single Democrat in the U.S. Senate closest to Wall Street, and they made him perhaps the majority leader, minority or majority leader, depending on this election, without even a voice vote, without even a challenge. And that kind of Democratic Party leadership, they're not going to commit themselves to cracking down on Wall Street or the big banks or any one of these issues.
They are, Schumer and that group
and so
are
the
Wall
question
Street.
is, do you have to come after them from the inside to ever get rid of some of them? I happen to think you do. I think he thinks so as well. But we'll see. Build the movement, and then you can make those tactical choices later.
Right. Yvette, what do you think about in terms of this down ticket fight? You think this movement is going to focus on the way Sanders is suggesting, actually get organized? I know there's a big, as we're speaking now, the next day there's a weekend of about 3,000 people going to a conference in Chicago, and more or less it's to discuss what's next. Do you think that's what might come out of this?
I mean, I'll be in Chicago discussing what's next. I'll be one of those 3,000. So I think that's what you will see. I think part of the problem in terms of what's happened is that, I mentioned this before, but we never saw us. Like, we never thought it was a possibility. If you believe in democratic socialism, you sort of feel like a pariah. The benefit of the Sanders campaign is kind of showing us that, no, you're not alone here. Everybody realizes that something is wrong and that they're not benefiting from the system. Even the Trump supporters realize that. They just have the wrong solutions to the problem. Their solution is more free market capitalism. We know that's not the way to go, but everybody realizes that something is amiss here. Something is afoot. So the problem is, what do you do with that? What do you do about that? And Sanders has said, go on, we're talking about down ticket. And I think that's a good thing. I think he has a lot of power in those down ticket races. I think he has a lot of influence. But I have to tell you that I'm sort of pessimistic in the sense that we still have a lot of money in politics. So we live in an era where these plutocrats, can just kind of buy elections. That's what we have now. You just buy an election. You buy a candidate. You just put your hand in their pocket. So I think that's something that we have to fix, but I don't think you stop the fight. And I think that's what Sanders is kind of saying. Like, we can't stop that fight. We have to keep fighting. And he's shown us that we have what it takes to fight. Look what we did with this guy. Nobody expected Sanders to go anywhere. And here he is, getting to a point where Hillary Clinton actually got nervous, in terms of the momentum that he was building. So he's showing us that we do have what it takes to kind of, if we want to create a new party, we can do that. If we want to fight from inside, we can do that too. We have the numbers, and I don't think we knew that. We had never seen that before, Sanders. We seen the Tea Party do it years ago. They won the mall and thousands of numbers, and we all kind of felt dejected. Why don't we have that? Why don't we have those numbers? Why can't our people come out like that? And now with the Sanders campaign, we've seen that we do have it. We can do it. So the question for us is, what is the next step? Is it down ticket? Is it third party? Where do we go from here? I think we have that question, but we know that we can go somewhere. We've seen ourselves on TV and thousands of numbers at rallies and all sorts of other things. We know that we can do it now, and I think that's huge.
Bill, just a final question. If Sanders is really going to pursue this, doesn't he have to kind of really try to keep this fundraising muscle going? It's unprecedented, the amount of money he's been able to raise. There was a lot of pessimism in progressive circles, people saying you can't do anything until you get money out of politics. Well, he just did something without getting money out of politics, in the sense of the amount of money he raised online. But doesn't he need to now throw this and help raise money for progressive candidates, including progressives who are going to primary corporate Democrats?
I think he does have to do that. I think he will do it. One of the things that this campaign has taught us is that the power of ideas is greater than the power of money. That if the Democratic Party had been truer to its values, it too might have raised those kinds of small dollar donations and not have made the awful marriage that it did with big money. There's a lot to be sorted out here. And if I just finish by saying that, when you think of all the different groups that are truly progressive and grassroots, of the Democracy for America, MoveOn.org, 350.org, the Working Families Party, there is this Washington progressive movement that has been co-opted, turned into basically a pack colonized by the Democratic Party. And then there's been growing up all of these other movements, many of which were involved in the Sanders campaign. I think Sanders' first job is to stop and just take a look at this tremendous array of forces that are out there and try to think through some of the questions of how we build a political movement, not just an electoral political movement, by the way. As 350.org doesn't do elections, and progressives didn't do mainly elections until just 25 or 30 years ago, at almost precisely the point when we started going out of business. And so there are a lot of different ways, not just running for office, but there are a lot of different ways to attack the system. And number one. And number two, that he has to say not only that his campaign will simply be a part of that, but that he will truly make his campaign the property of the donors and volunteers who constructed it. The great original sin of the Obama campaign was taking the Obama for America private and of turning over all those millions, those names of millions of volunteers and donors to the control of a small group of professional political consultants and big money donors. And that's not at all where Sanders wants to go, but he's going to have to pay attention to these specifics right now. How to make his own campaign, how to turn it into a public asset of a broader progressive movement, and how to work with all these other movements to begin anew, to really begin anew in progressive politics in America.
Okay, well, this is obviously just the beginning of a discussion. Thank you both for joining us.
My pleasure, as always.
And we'll pick this up again. And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.